Have you ever found yourself lashing out in a relationship, saying or doing something you barely recognize, and then being told you're the real problem? Have you been accused of being abusive when, deep down, you feel you were just trying to survive an impossible situation? One of the clearest hallmarks of reactive abuse is a role reversal in the heat of conflict. You might scream, cry, or throw something out of pure emotional exhaustion, while the other person remains eerily calm and collected. On the surface, it looks like you're the aggressor and they're the victim. But here's the truth. Their calmness is often strategic. It's not about emotional regulation, it's about control. They've spent days, weeks, or even years emotionally cornering you. With subtle digs, passive-aggressive remarks, gaslighting, and constant invalidation, they poke and prod until you break. And when you finally do, they say, "See? You're the abusive one. This is a trap." And it's one of the most emotionally devastating cycles to be caught in. The aggressor doesn't need to raise their voice. They weaponize your reaction instead. They collect evidence, often retelling the story with selective memory. You become volatile, dramatic, or crazy, even though your reaction was to sustained psychological stress. Recognizing this pattern is the first step in understanding that your outburst isn't who you are. It's what someone else elicited from you. In a healthy conflict, both people take some responsibility. They acknowledge hurt, missteps, or miscommunication. But in reactive abuse, you find yourself always being the one who apologizes. You're sorry for raising your voice. You're sorry for crying. You're sorry for breaking down. You're sorry for overreacting. Meanwhile, they apologize for nothing. Not for the silent treatment, not for the gaslighting, not for the emotional neglect, and certainly not for the years of microaggressions that led to your breakdown. This is not accountability. It's emotional manipulation. They want you to carry the shame. They want you to question yourself so thoroughly that you never turn the mirror toward them. You end up working overtime to repair the damage you supposedly caused, while they watch from a distance, entirely unbothered. This one-sided dynamic creates a toxic emotional seesaw. You absorb the blame, the guilt, and the labor of reconciliation. They sit on the high end, clean, detached, and righteous. This isn't just unfair, it's destructive. And it's one of the clearest signs you're being manipulated into believing your reaction is worse than their provocation. Gaslighting is a major tool in reactive abuse. Over time, you're made to feel like your perceptions aren't trustworthy. You replay events in your mind, trying to figure out if you're remembering things wrong. Maybe I am too emotional, maybe I did overreact, maybe I am the toxic one. These thoughts don't arise in isolation. They are carefully planted over time by someone who wants to rewrite the narrative. When someone repeatedly tells you you're remembering it wrong, or you're too sensitive, or you always make things worse, you begin to distrust yourself. And when you finally snap, when you yell or sob or slam a door, you feel ashamed of the one moment you lost control, rather than recognizing the months or years of provocation that led up to it. This is how reactive abuse warps your sense of self. You start to feel like a villain in your own story. You start to shrink yourself, trying to prevent another breakdown. You become afraid of your own emotions. And that's exactly what the manipulator wants. Their goal isn't just to provoke you, it's to erase your ability to interpret reality. Because if you can't trust yourself, you'll always rely on them to tell you what's true. That is the ultimate form of control. In reactive abuse, your breakdown is not just used against you in private, it's weaponized publicly. They tell friends, family, or colleagues that you're unstable, that you're emotionally volatile, that you're impossible to reason with. And because they seem calm and rational, people believe them. Now, you're not just battling internal shame, you're battling a public narrative. And this narrative can cost you relationships, reputation, and sometimes even custody in legal cases. The manipulator creates a version of the story where you're the problem, and they're the misunderstood saint. They might even record your outbursts or screenshot messages to prove it. But what no one sees is the 100 tiny emotional paper cuts that led to that moment. This is isolation by design. They want to cut you off from support systems, from people who might help you see the truth. If they can convince others you're the dangerous one, they gain more control, and you become more alone. But here's what's crucial. That single moment of rage or collapse does not define you. You're not abusive because you reacted. You're human. You were pushed, ignored, invalidated, provoked, and finally snapped. That doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you a survivor. Reactive abuse doesn't just live in the moment, it echoes into your identity. Over time, you feel like you're walking on eggshells, even in your own head. You question your every word, every emotion, every response. You no longer trust your intuition. You begin to see yourself through their eyes. You become critical of your emotions, ashamed of your reactions, and uncertain of your own worth. You feel unlovable, difficult, and fundamentally flawed. This erosion is slow but relentless, and it's often invisible from the outside. What's worse is that others might affirm your manipulator's version of events. If they're charming, socially respected, or hold authority, people will believe them, and that further cements your isolation. It makes you doubt yourself even more. But here's what you must understand. Abuse isn't just about bruises or shouting. Sometimes it's about persistent invalidation, psychological manipulation, and the strategic breaking down of your identity. You are not weak for reacting to emotional warfare. You are not unstable for crying out when pushed past your limit. And you are not abusive because someone else created the perfect storm to make you explode. The very fact that you're here, trying to understand, trying to heal, speaks to your strength. You're not crazy, you're not evil, you're not broken. You were conditioned to believe you are those things, and it's time to let go of that lie. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, you're not alone, and you're not doomed. Healing from reactive abuse begins with naming it. Once you understand what's happening, you start to reclaim your narrative. Here are a few powerful truths to hold on to. Your reaction doesn't define your character. It reflects your environment. The person who pokes the wound isn't innocent just because they don't scream. People who care about you should seek to understand you, not provoke or punish you. You deserve peace, not emotional warfare. Start by validating your own experience. Journal about it. Speak to a trauma-informed therapist. Connect with support groups. Remove yourself, if you can, from environments that constantly bait you into breakdowns. And most importantly, learn to trust your instincts again. Your emotions are not a weakness. They are signals. Your anger, your sadness, your frustration, they are data. They are telling you something is deeply wrong. Honor that. It may take time to rebuild your self-worth, but you can, and you will. Because once you realize that reactive abuse is a trap, you'll stop blaming yourself for being caught in it, and you'll start finding your way out. Thank you for watching. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because no one deserves to feel crazy for reacting to pain they didn't create. You're not crazy, you're waking up. And that's the beginning of healing. What other topics around emotional abuse or healing would you like to explore next?